So it's very high possibility I could break one of these.
Hello and welcome back to Homesteading, Northern Michigan. Today we are going to be installing a starter on this '01 Cadillac DeVille. Funny thing about this is the engineers thought it would be a good idea to put the starter in an empty void there inside the engine. And yeah, it's a pretty hefty shop cost. So I'm going to be doing it myself. We're also going to be installing a new fuel injectors, a power steering pump, and a belt tensioner, along with new intake gaskets because you got to take the intake off to do the starter. So we're going to polish this turd up. There's some good music, some good voiceover work. If you guys could, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell if you want to see more videos like, well, I don't really do this kind of stuff. I do more like milling. I'm building a homestead. You'll see garden updates and stuff like that here. Won't see so much wrenching. I'm just trying to keep my hoopty on the road for as long as possible. So hit that subscribe button.
So just running over the vacuum diagram on video for anybody that needs it, including myself. These do get more brittle with age, so be careful, and you're always going to want to check your little rubber seals. Rubber seals for cracks or anything like that. That will affect the way these operate the computer system. So let's have at it. So that's what it looks like with the intake off. We're going to pop this starter out, but first we are going to put paper towel in there. We do not want to drop any bolts, leaves, rocks, nuts, whatever would be here inside of the engine. That's not good. Engines don't like that stuff. So back to the time warp. Alright, so our new starter is installed, wires are attached. We're going to clean up where the gaskets are going to sit. And then we will take off the power steering pump, and we have the tensioner now. So the tensioner is getting replaced with the power steering pump. We got to remove the coolant jug. Alright, don't mind the chickens fighting over a couple of hens out here. But what we're going to do next is we're going to take this soft bristled wire brush, this can of brake cleaner, and we're going to clean up all around here. We're just going to scrub it away and then clean it with the brake cleaner. Real easy like. This is why we put the paper towels in. So there it is, nice and clean. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna clean the throttle body out. It's already got the wire brush out and everything. All right, so next what we gotta do is we gotta take off this power steering pump. It's really loud, it's whining really bad. So to get this pump off, there's 3 bolts, but they're behind this solid pulley. There's no holes in here to access the bolts, so you have to use a special pulley remover because it's a pressed on pulley to get to them. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this off so we have some room to work here. And you see the positives right there? But you always disconnect your battery before you start working on it. Anything, say a wrench falls right here and here, it's gonna get hot. That gets pretty stiff before that initial pop. I need some motor mounts in this. Now we can access our bolts. Get down. There we go, there's our power steering pump. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking a flathead screwdriver to slide the sleeves out to fit the new power steering pump. When you tighten up the bolts, they will press back in there. Now here's a good look at that sleeve where the bolt is that I tapped out with the screwdriver to fit the pump in there. That presses right back into the pump when I tighten up the bolt. It's always a good idea to lube up the shaft and the inside of the pulley. Luckily, I have some spilt power steering fluid on this remover installer kit. Little trick to doing this right every time. You see how I'm wiggling it as I tighten up the installer? That'll help seat it. If you start cranking on it with a wrench and you're crooked, you will actually damage the pulley and create a little lip. You can fix that by filing it out, but just give it a little wiggle and hand tighten it down before you start cranking on it, and you'll be good to go. Alright, so it's like 400 grit. And all I'm doing is cleaning this up because if this leaks air, it will cause the engine to rev higher. It'll suck air into the engine. It's a pretty crucial spot for a gasket to be, so I'm going to make sure it seals properly. I'm actually going to put a very, very thin layer of gasket maker on there. Alright, so now we have our surface prepped, as well as our intake surface on the heads are prepped. What we're going to do now is we're going to prep the intake. Okay, so we got her cleaned out. She's looking pretty good in there. Still a little dirty, but nowhere near what it was. It was a messy job cleaning that out. Couldn't get all the way into it. Opted on not taking this out because of how rusty that looked. It looks better now because I cleaned it, but I didn't want it to break. If it breaks, I'm screwed, you know. So the trick to doing these is not to start and work your way around. It's to start like right here has the little hump, and then you work your way around, but you press. You don't slide in or you'll stretch it and it will never fit and it'll pop out. So you just press them in and then go through and press them in. Make sure they're all the way in. That way they won't fall out when you flip it over and put it on there. I'm going to pull those rags. We're going to drop this intake in. Okay, so I stopped the time lapse to show you. This would be your general torque pattern for most anything you're messing with. You start with the center and don't torque it down all the way. Just go about halfway. Just want to hit a loose spot here. All right, now we're back to tight. And I'm just going like one finger, one thumb. And then you go over to your next over from your first. And your torque pattern will be the same for most any pan or heads or intake. The pattern will be the same. So start from the inside, work your way out, do it in two or three turns, and you will never have a problem. All right, so we did this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and we got this one. You see the pattern here? All right, now we cross over and go over here. So anytime you're doing an oil pan or a trans pan or an intake on anything, heck, even valve covers. Back to this corner. Just give her a little snug. There we go. All right, so we got them all snugged. We're gonna go through and do it again. So we're gonna start, we'll start up here again. Doesn't really matter. See, this one's loose. So we snug it. Go to this one, snug it. Go to this one. See, this one wasn't there. There we go. Snug it. Snug it. Snug it. Snug it. I screwed up my pattern somewhere, but it doesn't matter really. As long as you go from the inside bolts to the outside bolts. So we'll do it again, one last time. And it's loose again, see that? So we snug it. Look how loose this is. See, now we snug it. And that should be it. You can double check them. I will. We'll make sure they're all snug. These are very thin bolts. You do not want to break them, so you don't go too hard. That's why I'm using the little ratchet. If you were to look up the torque specs, they would be in inch pounds. They wouldn't even be in foot pounds. So the rubber gasket does all the sealing. And we are good.
Normally I would be setting the fuel injectors in the rail before putting them into the plenum. But they're cheap aftermarkets and they don't have the clip that snaps onto the rail. So I did it once and they seated too far into the rail, wouldn't seat to the intake.
So we got all our vacuum lines on, all our electrical's done. Here's a look at the vacuum lines in case somebody needs them. Main ones to indicate. You got a little jumper that goes from the fuel regulator to the intake. Yeah, this is your brake booster. This all goes to your evap, your EGR. Got another EGR back there. That's just a breather. Goes to the little one underneath your brake booster line. I still have to put the jug in, put the serpentine belt on, fill up the power steering, and we are good to start her up. Here's a little trick. Since they don't give you enough room, take a couple of thin pieces of wood or a stick or two and get that belt around the pulleys you need it to. Save you a lot of headache and some scraped up hands. Alright, so she's all back together. I got the belt on. There's the new tensioner down there. New power steering pump. Brand new fuel injectors. New intake gasket. And a new starter. So, it's time to fire her up. Before starting, you want to prime the engine by turning the key in the on position to let the fuel pump run for its initial 3-4 seconds. Shut it off. Do that a few times before cranking the engine. Priming the engine and starting it. Fun fact, the ECT, or the engine coolant temperature sensor, also tells the computer when it's a cold start, and it will give it an enriched mixture as well as a prolonged shifting in your transmission to get the engine up to its optimal temperature for combustion. That's right, it doesn't just kick your fans on and tell you how hot the engine is. That's how she's supposed to sound. Right there. So gripping. I'll have to put a clamp on that. I got some. No biggie. Come on, baby. Sounds good. All right. See how good the power steering works. Sounds good and feels good. Well, my friends, that concludes this episode of Homesteading Northern Michigan. I know it wasn't the traditional like garden or building video or milling, but I appreciate you guys sticking to the end, and I appreciate you subscribing. And to my members, my Michiganders, your support is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. You guys have a blessed day. Peace.